to my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond. This is episode number 76. It's also our 10th episode of the year. We haven't missed a Tuesday yet, knock on wood. So far, we've made every Tuesday night. That's going to be impossible, of course, as we go through the year. But you never know. Maybe we'll do 52 episodes and break our own record. So 30 was our first year, and then we've kind of dwindled since then. So I know in July it's going to be a little rough, and I'm starting to judge shows in late April all the way to October. So, I might not be able to do it every Tuesday then, because I do like to prep for these shows, and I also like to prep when I'm going to judge. So the two might conflict a little bit. But we'll see what we can do. And we do have a camera tonight. It's a little dark. We don't have our Breyer camera mode anymore, but we have the Jacksons. And then, of course,
come join the family.
Come join the family. So we're at Studio J, as I coined it 3 or 4 years ago. We do Joe Live out of here, and we also do this podcast, which of course is the most popular podcast out of this studio. But anyway, I just do it so often. Black Hand and Beyond. We're getting some people watching already. Jan, thanks for watching. Tonight's going to be a cool episode, kind of a throwback episode to doing a slideshow. We're going to have 90-some photos to go through. You could have looked at them already because they're all on Facebook. It's just easier for me to download them. I tried all week last week to get them from my drive and stuff like that, from the gallery to the drive. But this old man just couldn't figure out how to do that well. I had a 27 and a 23-year-old helping me, so I don't feel too bad, because we just decided to give up and use Facebook. So that's why I did the 3 photo dumps, as I called them. They were posts with a bunch of photos in each one of them. So hopefully if you went through those and enjoyed them, now tonight we'll get to talk about them. So other people are joining in too. There's Danny Bishop Butler, of course, and then Hi Kent. Hi, Facebook user. Hi, Kent. I don't know who that is, but it's probably somebody I know very well. So a few people come on here, of course, with Ecamm, and then I can tell who it is. Some of the regulars are signed in through Ecamm. Again, these are all through Ecamm, and I updated tonight, so it should be updated the latest, greatest version. So here we go. We're going to start out the show. Of course, I'm going to talk about sponsorships at the end of the show. Hi, Terry from Iowa. Good evening. Contact my wife. We're getting down to crunch time about sponsorships. So either me or my wife or Joy in the office, we're all working together. And my wife and I are in charge of the stalls this year too. So, it takes a whole village to put on these POA events. So we're going to kind of spread it around this year. And my wife and I are going to step up a little bit and help a little more, since we live closer to Tulsa. So we did have a board meeting last night with a 3.5-hour board meeting, and then I can't sleep very much. I'm wound up after a board meeting or even an event. When I go to a sale or a futurity or anything, I'm thinking about the horses, and I just can't go to bed. So I'm running on adrenaline and about 3 tumblers of coffee and a couple Coke Zeros tonight, so hopefully I don't stumble too bad and I pronounce everything very good. So there's Shirley Hayworth. Hi, Shirley. Okay, here we go. So tonight's episode is dedicated to Mr. Patrick Burton, who grew up in Kansas. Pat, a good friend of mine. He lives in Texas, of course. There's his young son, Declan. Boy, he hit the parent lottery, didn't he, Declan? He's bred in purple there. His mom and dad are great people, great horse people. And I'm dedicating this episode to Pat tonight because, as you all know, Pat has suffered with the knee for a long time, and today he had it taken care of, and so that's cool. And I know Pat's going to rehabilitate great, because he's a very tough guy. He reminds me of my dad and my brother, and hopefully me someday when I grow up, just a guy that I want to strive to be, a real tough individual and outspoken, but kind too as well. So that's Pat right there. And again, this episode is dedicated to him for more reasons than one, because some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, he helped do. So that's kind of cool too. So we move on to the next picture here, and this is Pat's family's first stallion, his dad, Ronald Burton from Plainsville, Kansas. I believe this was their first stallion. Early registration number 8018. That's East Acres Polka Dot. And, of course, he was by WPF's Diamond Dollar, who was by the famous Minnesota stallion WPF's Diamond Jim, who was own son of Polka Dot Prince, who was number 39. And Pat was always the one that said stop him at Blackhand, so I'll stop at number 39, Polka Dot Prince. But you see Helen Latch down there, the executive secretary, of course, the great Latch family. She's the one that signed this paper in 1968 when the Burton family from Kansas bought this young colt. And then you see he was advanced to permanent a little later in life in 1980. But I happen to have a copy of this and this picture, so I thought it was cool to share tonight. So, okay, tonight's episode is called Two That Have Made a Difference. And we're talking about two quarter-horse stallions. And why would we talk about quarter-horse stallions on a POA podcast? Well, you know the reason if you follow POAs. Quarter-horse and Appaloosas had a big influence on our breed. But we're also talking about two men that had the foresight to breed to these stallions, and they both were in POAs a long time. I would say they were in the twilight of their careers when they bred to these two stallions. And of course, the two men I'm talking about are Norman Stevenson, who's all the way over on, let me put the picture up there for you, all the way on the right. And then, of course, second to the left there, Keystone's on the very far left. And then that young man right next to him is a young Lynn Puffenbarger. Him and Norm were both in their 30s, I believe, in this picture. This was taken in 1965. The board of directors, that's like a who's who of POA. Most of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. And if they're not, they probably should be. So, but anyway, like I say, in the twilight of their careers, they both did some things that we're going to talk about tonight. And that's two stallions that they used. One was Fly the Red Eye, a Supreme Champion quarter horse stallion that Norm used. And the other one was Spanish Array, World Champion quarter horse that Wieskamp bred stallion, of course, that Lynn used. And then also Norm also bred to that stallion too. So there's Fly the Red Eye. Sorry, it's a little blurry when it's in the big version there. But just a beautiful horse. He was a reserve world champion in performance halter. And of course, he was a racehorse. I think he had a 90-something, maybe 92, maybe a little higher speed index. And he wasn't a very tall horse, and he was kind of chromed up the way Norm liked him. So Norm bred some mares to him right at the end, and we'll talk about that a little more in depth here. And then here's Spanish Array. I have a lot of pictures of Spanish Array tonight to show you. Some were taken by Bob Roseland. I believe this one might have been taken by him. A lot of these pictures are courtesy of Jeremy Stevens, who's a good photographer himself, and of course he's a historian up there in Sterling, Kansas. We'll be talking about him and Julie because they're tied into the story on both directions, Fly the Red Eye and Spanish Array, so that's kind of cool. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the photographers that I've used pictures of in all my podcasts, including tonight. And we're going to be seeing some pictures from Patrick Kelly and, of course, some professional photographers and Jeremy Stevens. And like Patrick is a professional photographer, Jeremy could be if he wanted to. If he wanted to quit his day job, he could be a professionally inclined photographer. And then all the ones you see down on the bottom of the names, all the win photos we're going to look at tonight. So my phone's going off. Let's make sure everybody can hear me. Yep, that's just somebody else. So, okay. So that is Spanish Array. So first of all, we're going to talk about a little bit. It's not an in-depth about each of these individual POA breeders, but, you know, Norman Stevenson, he had such a great long life that he went by 4 different names, really. Norman Stevenson was his given name. Some people called him NR. Some people called him Steve, kind of outside of the horse world. He told me that was kind of in his profession when he went back to school in his 50s to become a lawyer, and he became a district attorney in Texas, and anyway, assistant district attorney. And I think some of those people called him Steve. I always called him Norm. I didn't call him NR. I talked to him on the phone quite a bit towards the last 10 years of his life for sure, because he was still very active in POAs. So again, that's him with his daughter Karen, and he bred a lot of Dragons POAs, and then later he dropped that. Some people named them DNRs or whatever, you know, like for Dragons, but then some of them just didn't carry a prefix either. So there's Fly the Red Eye again, the picture we used. And what makes this story so cool is when Norm was in his 80s, you know, he told me one time when he was in his 70s, he said, Kent, when I was a kid growing up, I always wanted a gun, like a rifle or something like that, and a horse. And he said I couldn't have either one as a kid. Either his parents just wouldn't let him, or they couldn't afford it. It just wasn't the situation. He said, so when I grew up, I made sure I had over 100 guns and over 100 horses. So people that were on his place, like Pat many times, they know he had over 100 horses. Of course, he had quarter horses and Appaloosas too. But even long ago in the 60s and 70s, he concentrated on the dragon bloodline for quite a while, but he also put in great Appaloosas, and he used few spots early on when a lot of people weren't. And he also used a lot of quarter horse blood early on, even when the POAs were 54 inches. So, and he liked racing POAs. So towards the end of his life, he decided to breed to this little stallion that was in Texas, and this is Fly the Red Eye, as we said, one of the later Supreme Champions. I think there's been, 13 or 14 Supreme Champions in the quarter horse world, so it's not something that happens every day. And here's a cool picture of him running. And the thing I like about this story is Norman basically knew his time was limited, that he didn't have much time left on this earth, and he took 6 of his best mares, 5 POAs, and 1 quarter horse, and went and bred to this stallion. And the results we're going to see tonight, and they're still young, they're only 5. And Norman passed away before those foals were born, and I think he probably knew that he wasn't going to see those foals, or it was going to be close. And like I say, he knew his time was coming, but he wanted to leave a legacy, and he'd been breeding since the 60s, but he wanted to just leave a little extra because he loved POAs, he loved breeding, trying to create something a little better, than he had before. I want to take a little break now. Thank Charlie's watching. Good evening, Charlie. Some other people are watching. Thank you for tuning in, guys. So let's go back. This is kind of the highlights here of this horse. You see his stud fee in 2017 was $2,000. He was standing at the Flying K Ranch in Pilot Point, Texas. Norm bred to him in 18, and then he passed away, I believe, in late 18. So the 3 POAs we're going to talk about tonight that are by him, the 3 registered POAs, they are all 19 babies, so because he bred to him 1 season. But you see his statistics there. You got 97 speed index. I kind of did the horse wrong. I apologize. He is gelded now, this horse, maybe because he was short, I don't know, but he's a classy looking animal, and he fit POAs well, especially with the ranch and the more performance stuff we're doing outside of just the rail classes and everything. Just being a Supreme Champion, real good fit. There's a beautiful headshot of him. Thank you to the photographer down there. That's a copyrighted photo, but thank you. We'll give you credit for that. So here's the first one we're going to talk about tonight, and don't laugh at me, but I'm going to put some glasses on. Here's my glasses cam. I will be 52 in July, so I guess I shouldn't be too ashamed that I have to wear readers now. So this is a gelding, and there's a gelding, a mare, and a stallion by Fly the Red Eye. Kind of cool that there's one of each, and I think they're all going to make big names for themselves. One's already a national champion, the mare is. That's the last one we'll talk about of these 3 siblings. Again, they were all born in 2019. This is Leaving on a Jet Plane, and he was out of the mare Dragonins, or he is out of the mare Dragonins Spanish Rose, and she was an own daughter of Spanish Array. So it brings it full circle here that one of the POA mares that Norm had bred by Spanish Array actually was crossed then to Fly the Red Eye. So you see how horsey this guy is. And he ended up going to Minnesota. Danielle Kruger, who's Danielle Kimmery now. Of course, she grew up riding a lot of great POAs, but her and Black Swan became legendary. Black Swan S is in the Hall of Fame, of course. And she turned this guy into a barrel racer. So he's only 5 years old now. She's already won quite a bit on her little circuit she competes with him on. I think she's about ready to turn him loose in a year or 2 and go maybe bigger time. Of course, she's competing against all kinds of horses, and maybe some ponies, but she may be the only pony there too. But he don't look very ponyish when his sire is a Supreme Champion quarter horse and his grandsire on the bottom side is a world champion halter quarter horse, Wieskamp branded. So talk about a working pedigree. He's got it top and bottom. Again, these pictures were taken by Patrick Kelly. Thank you, Patrick. They were supplied by Danielle. And she's seen a video. She told me that I believe Janelle Burton sent her. And I think it was her. Maybe it was Rosalind, but Spencer. But I think it was Janelle. And I seen the video, and he's just flying, a little bitty baby flying down a lane. And she called right away, and she got this colt and then of course she gelded him because she didn't really need a stallion. You know, her folks had Kiddo Tough after we had him, and then we bought Kiddo Tough from him. So, you know, she's been in the breeding business and stuff, but right now she's concentrating more on barrel racing. Look at this picture right there. That's a cool picture, isn't it? So this is leaving on a jet plane. He hasn't been to a POA national show or anything like that yet, and he may never be. She might just show him up in Minnesota in the upper Midwest in the gaming circuit and barrel circuit, and he might make a great name for himself there. He already is. So she's already won some hardware with him, so she's doing a great job with him. So the next colt we're going to talk about is I Fly First Class, and again, he's a 19, of course. Fly the Red Eye, and his mother traces back to Spanish Array twice. Kind of a cool story. So the mother of this little guy is Array of Sunshine, again a Stevenson bred mare by TX's Chip and Array. Of course, he's by Pal Chip and Putt, and then out of the Grand Champion mare Salty Britches Array, who was an own daughter of Spanish Array, and we're going to talk about her later because she's one of them that got. She was the first one of the first ones Lynn Puffenberger had by Spanish Array. So we'll talk about that later in the show. But Norman Turnaround, Norm Stevenson bred TX's Chip and Array to Dragon's Spanish Rose, the mother to the gelding we just seen, and produced Array of Sunshine on 2010 little POA mare. And then he turned around and bred that to Fly the Red Eye to get this baby. And you see in this little ad here, Rosalind says, get ready for performance. Colt by Fly the Red Eye, AQHA Supreme Champion and Reserve World Champion out of TX's Chip and Array daughter with Pat Burton and two others. Well, that caught the attention of the Stevens up in Kansas. Of course, this is Jeremy and Julie's daughter, Kyra, and she's married now. I apologize. I don't have her married name on my brain right now, but if Jeremy's watching, or Julie, or Kira herself, they can say it. But she's into speed events too. She's won a lot of national titles with a J&J mare, and of course she rode Salty POAs growing up. So when she seen the pedigree on this colt and the looks of him, she had to have him. So he's still at her folks' place up in Sterling, Kansas. He's still intact. He's a 5-year-old stallion. And there's a little older picture of him as a weaner there, as a baby. And as this colt matured, I've been watching him in pictures. I've seen him once or twice now up there with the Red Barns in Kansas. And they showed him as a yearling. And the colt just keeps blossoming. I mean, here he is as a 2-year-old. Look at that horse. I love this horse's color, his flaxen mane and tail, and I know his pedigree, top and bottom, so I just love it. There you go, Jeremy. Thank you. Telene, hopefully I didn't butcher that. They don't hire me to do shows anymore just because I butcher names sometimes, but anyway, I got her first name right. So thanks for sending that, Jeremy. And we're going to go through some pictures of this stallion as he progressed in age. Again, he hasn't been back to the national show since he was a yearling, just because, you know, they're breeding. They have several stallions up there, 3 counting him that they breed, and a lot of other commitments. So, but he may make it to the show one of these days. Back to the show, he definitely has the body. Look at that shoulder for a POA and that big old hip on him. And this is just him standing in the pen. This isn't lunged every day with the throat latch, throat sweat on him or anything like that. This is just him in his everyday clothes, looking at us through the fence. This picture right here, I know it's out in the pen and the pipes are there and the welded wire in the background, but look at that head from the front on shot and that chest and those muscles. Talk about vision Norm Stevenson had to do this, knowing full well he wouldn't get to see what these horses grew up to be, but he knew they'd make an impact. And this guy's already having some colts. We'll look at some of those. Here he is maturing again. And, he's 5 now this spring. And I think he was probably 4 there. Again, he takes beautiful pictures front on. And I believe this is him now. So Jeremy can correct me if I'm wrong. But he's got the balance now. He's got the big old hip. He's correct. He's got a little bit of a stud neck, but again, he's never been shown since he was a yearling, and he has been breeding mares. And he's got that big old quarter horse stud jowl on him. And especially when you look front on, he's just got one of those heads you're going to remember. So here's one of his early babies out of a Palomino mare, and he let a Palomino come out there. Nice little blanket. I love the neck and head and the eye on this filly. I believe this is a filly. This is one of their clients that bred a mare to him. And they call this stallion Norm, by the way, up there, Jeremy and Julie and Kira. So that's cool that they call him Norm. And then there's another picture of that filly. And I know they had one last year. They had a filly, and he's got more babies on the way. So look for more great things to come by iFly First Class 2019 POA Stallion. So that brings us to this picture here, and there's Pat and Janelle. Let's do the eyeglass cam again. So this is Don't Stop Me Now. A lot of people know this great mare. They call her the Red Mare. And this mare is very handy. She won a title this last year at the Congress in halter, but believe me, her future is in ranch and performance and just working classes like that. And she could have a bright future outside of POAs. I hope she stays in POAs her whole life, but this mare is going to be in demand. Now, her pedigree, she's the only one of the 3 registered POAs by Fly the Red Eye that doesn't have Spanish Array on the bottom side, but she's got a good bottom side. Rawhide's Vanzanita is her dam. By TMD's Two-Eyed Rawhide, we all know him, and Norman had him for a while too. Of course, he was a national champion by 2 national champions, buying out of Two-Eyed Sunny and Camps Forever Gold. And then Rawhide bred a quarter mare. Stevenson did that. Vanzy's Golden Daisy, who is a daughter of Vanzy's Golden Nugget by My Skip Vanzy, who goes back to Wieskamp again. My Skip Ashwood, who I believe was a northern stallion, made a name for himself. And you have Roan Vanzy back there and some other good stuff too on the bottom side. So you still have quarter horse in the 2nd generation back there. So you had a half quarter horse, half POA bred to Fly the Red Eye to get this mare. Again, all 3 of these were colored, and they were registered. One mare didn't settle of the 5, and one of the colts died as a baby. And then the quarter horse foal, I heard, Pat told me, is on the barrel circuit as well. So, as a horse. So here's a picture of Pat showing this mare. Of course, they keep a reining mane on her because Janelle does show her in the working classes and the reining classes. And she still wins in halter even with that mane, which I love. There she is, Pat presenting her in Tulsa at the Congress, and she won that class. That was a tough medium mare class as well. This mare isn't that tall either. She'll never be up in the big class. She's a medium mare her whole life, and she's what, 3/4 quarter horse, something like that. Doc Demers used to always do it right down to the percentage and send it to me. Every horse he owned, he'd send me the percentage of quarter horse, Appaloosa, and POA blood in them. There's Pat taking the hardware there, the nice champion trophy, walking out of the ring. I know Pat was a little emotional because he said you did it for Norm, because, again, Norm's had the vision. And then he gifted those mares to Pat, and Pat made sure those babies got out where they needed to be. I think he handpicked some good people there, and some people found them and got these three babies all where they need to be. So you have Kira up in Kansas with the stud, and then Danielle Kruger, who's into barrel racing now with the barrel racing POA. That just makes sense. And then, of course, Pat's wife, Janelle Burton, who grew up in POAs, champion rider, enjoying showing this mare in some of the fun classes like this. This is her at a non-POA event just lately. This is this spring already, which is still winter up north, but down here it's starting to be t-shirt weather once in a while. Today was 55 in Oklahoma. Yesterday was 80 something. That's why I'm a little red in the face. And there she is working some steers, it looks like. And then roping the dummy. Look at that mare look through the bridle. Talk about a look. She's staring that calf down. Those ears are pricked forward, and just look at that front end on that mare. You know you're going to be well mounted on something like that. We wouldn't even have to know the pedigree and know she's bred to do stuff. So this is a pretty cool obstacle here. It kind of teeters. It does teeter, I believe, on that spool there. So that's some enhanced trail, if you want to call it that. So there's Pat and Declan again. So that's the end of that reel there. So we'll move on to our next segment of the show. Let's see what we got for comments here while we move on. Jeremy, 2 fillies by Norm. Okay, Shirley had 2 fillies by Norm. Good. The pal baby is mine, Shirley Hayworth. Well, I'm glad you're watching tonight. That's great. So I like that filly, especially when she was a baby. I haven't seen pictures of her lately. Maybe you can send them to me on Facebook Messenger. So, all right, let's move on to... There's our next group of photos we're going to talk about. Okay, moving on to... We covered Fly the Red Eye. And I just think, again, it was cool that a long-time POA breeder who bred for hundreds of POAs would take some of his best mares and breed them to a stallion like that. And you see what the 3 registered babies out of that group are doing. So now we move on to another legendary breeder. Of course, this man needs no introduction, and his wife shouldn't either. Winona, they're both passed, of course, but this is Lynn and Winona Puffenbarger, and that's their famous stallion who lived to be 30 years old. On the trailer there, the picture with the Pony of the Americas emblem, that's Chief Little Britches. But tonight's show is going to be about him breeding to this horse when Lynn decided to breed to Spanish Array. So if you've seen on my POA history group, Scott Campbell mentioned that he was the one that brought him home, Spanish Array, to Indian Meridian. I'm not even sure if they called it Indian Meridian then, but 2 people, Marcia Miller and Glenn Huddleston, they were from around the Enid area. They ended up purchasing Spanish Array basically as a business project, and they named it Indian Meridian, and they hired, what's his name, Denny, right? Denny to show him Hazlitt, and he made him a world champion, and then the rest is history. People started flocking. We used to haul mares from Wisconsin and Minnesota when my family had our horse hauling transport business, and every year we knew we were going to go to Goldtree, Oklahoma, so Dad would stop and see Lynn because it was 15 miles away from Goldtree or so. I've cashed checks in Goldtree before because Lynn had an account at that bank. So that was really close to Cherokee, Oklahoma, where thousands of POAs called home over 60 years, and it's pretty close to where I'm sitting tonight in Enid, Oklahoma. It's probably, 30 miles away or so. So just a little bitty town, and they had a barn out there. I know they kept him in Enid for a while, too. I think at the fairgrounds where Bob Rosen seen him before and took some good pictures of him. I think he probably took this picture of him. Again, courtesy of Jeremy for sending me all these pictures. I had some of them already. Some of them I probably had from Jeremy, but he sent me a whole bunch to do this episode tonight, and that's how we're going to have 90-some pictures. Lexi loves Lynn's breeding. My first pony was sired by Salty Solar Eclipse, sired by Spanish Array, I believe. So, yeah, that'd be Salty Solar Array, I'm sure, not Solar Eclipse probably. So we're going to show him tonight. He was a national champion, one of the stallions Lynn kept for a long time. He kept 2 own sons of Spanish Array that I know of, Salty Array, and then, of course, Salty Solar Array. So, but this is Spanish Array again. See that old truck out there? It wasn't old then. That was in the 80s. This horse, a lot of people said he was one of the biggest horses of his time as far as muscle and just depth. And he came off the Wieskamp program, of course, born in 1980. Wieskamp had been around for a long time, and some people had kind of forgotten about him by the 80, but he had a big following, and he had two colts born around that time, Skip So Smooth, and this horse here, Spanish Array. and he ended up selling Spanish Array to the people I mentioned. There's Hank holding the trophy there. He didn't get in a lot of world pictures, but there's the handler, and that's when he won the World Show in 1985, and he also won the Congress that year, and I actually have that trophy because they donated a bunch of their trophies, and it was just sitting in a room somewhere, and I picked it up just as a collector, as a horse person, since he had such a big impact on POA. And I was going to bring that tonight, and it was going to be on this camera right here, but it's not because I forgot to bring it. Sorry, guys. The 3.5-hour board meeting kind of had me a little rummy today, so I forgot to grab it. So my two cameras that was going to show the front and back of the Congress trophy from Columbus, Ohio, is just showing these scenes tonight. But that's all right. We got a lot of pictures to look at. So that's Spanish Array. Of course, there's the picture we showed earlier. You see that classic Wieskamp brand on him. 4 white socks and a blaze in the face. There's his sire. That's Skips Barber. Skips Barber was one of the later horses they showed in the 70s off the Wieskamp program. Of course, the 50s was the golden era of Wieskamp, 50s and 60s. Skipper W was born in 45. All these horses go back to him. And there's Skips Barber as an older horse in the famous corrals in Alamosa. Beautiful headed. You know, they're just well built horses. If you haven't read the book about Hank Wieskamp written by the late Frank Holmes, you need to get a copy. I have like 3 copies or 4. 2 of them are wore out. One's in mint condition, and one I read once in a while. So that book is a great reference guide if you want to learn about Wieskamp. And then this is the mother to Spanish Array. This was Spanish Gala, and she was a daughter of the big Palomino Skips Bid. Skips Bid was an own son of Skipper's King, who was born in 54 at Wieskamps, and he was a Skipper W son, but he was so much bigger, and he was a lot like Spanish Array. And him and his full sister made a huge impact on the Wieskamp program throughout the rest of Wieskamp's life. They were born in 50 and 54, and this was a granddaughter of that horse, and it was a daughter of the big Palomino Skips Bid. So there's another picture of Spanish Array. So this was taken in, why I included this ad here, because it says Indian Meridian Ranch, so it gives credit to them. And then photo 896. Well, Lynn's first 2 POAs by this stallion were born in 96. So the year this photo was taken, he'd been out of the show pen a long time by then. And I think he had like 30-some grands. He went, Wieskamp even showed him before he sold him out to Oklahoma. But of course, they made him the world champion that he became, and then the world champion sire. So 10 years, he's 16 years old in this picture. He's the real deal. Of course, NN, Wieskamp, pure breeding. Here's another picture of him. Just a cool horse. There he is, just standing out in the rough. Look at how big he is. Look at that big old hip. They retain water down that roll, down his back and hip. So this is a great picture. This needs in the museum someday, because these are the first 2 foals sired by Spanish Array, POA foals, of course, and they were born in 96. So, and they went on to be grand in 99 and 2000 respectively, both led by Pat Burton. Every registered foal that Lynn had by Spanish Array, POA foal, became an international or national Congress champion. Now, I should repeat that because that's a lot. Every foal became, now he had 2 solids, and back then we didn't do the testing, and one became a cornerstone of Jeremy and Julie's program up in Kansas, solid mare, and then there was a full brother to her that went up to Wisconsin to be a stallion for a while, and they were both full siblings to Spanish or Salty Array, who we're going to talk about, one of the last ones out of by Spanish Array. So, but this is Salty Britches Array on the left, and if you were at Congress last year or any shows around, you know the pedigree. It tracks back to her. A lot of pedigrees do, and we'll show why in a minute. And then, of course, that's Lynn holding her. This is at the Tulsa State Fair, I believe, Bob Hedler's photo. And then that's Tommy, Lynn's son. Tommy just retired lately from Alfalfa County Extension Agent, but here he is, probably in his 30s, holding Salty Crystal Array. And both these fillies from the same crop went back to back in 1999 and 2000 as grand champion mares. Here's a young 3-year-old mare. This is Salty Britches Array, and she wasn't quite fully developed yet. Pat had picked her up from Lynn's, and she was just kind of running around, hadn't had a lot of feed, just living off of alfalfa and stuff, so she wasn't in show shape. And you see that big front shoulder, kind of that Wieskamp shoulder, and that scopy head and neck, and she grew into her hip after this, because this was in Reno at the World Show that year. And then she went on to win Grand it would have been in Wisconsin in '99. This is her at the stock show, courtesy of Jeremy for this picture, just kind of a snapshot waiting to go in the ring. And then this is her. She won a lot of stuff. I believe she was one of the first grand champions to unanimously win all the JPFC stuff. So that's her, kind of a big headshot there, close-up headshot of her. Beautiful. Again, looking through that bridle, that's that look you get with that great horse breeding, hybrid kind of with the POA. So here's a picture of Salty Crystal Array, and we're going to go back and talk about Salty Britches Array's impact after I get through all the champions by Spanish Array. I just figured it'd be easier that way. And here's Salty Crystal. We just seen her as a baby. I apologize, I don't have a better picture of her, but she was, look at that top line and smooth body there. She was grand as a 4-year-old. So as an age mare in 2000, they waited a year because they promoted Britches Array in '99, so then they brought out Crystal Array in 2000. This is another filly champion that Pat showed. Again, Pat showed all the Spanish Array Salty champions, every one of them. He let in for their class wins. Some people might have let him on later for their seniors or whatever, reserve grands, but for class wins, Pat was the exhibitor. And this is Salty Boots Array. If you know Lynn Puffenbarger's program, he had a mare there forever. I think she probably died on the place. Maybe he gave her away to somebody right at the end, but her name was Salty Boots, just a little pony mare. And he bred her to Spanish Array, and out came Salty Boots. So I mentioned Scott Campbell earlier. Of course, he grew up in POAs. His brother, Ian Campbell, his kids rode POAs, and he was active in POAs. And their dad, Jim Campbell, was from over by Jet, and towards the end there of his life. And him and Lynn were really good friends. He's the man that traveled with Lynn when Lynn found He's Got the Look, who became Salty Gotta Look. And they went to deliver some hay, and I think when Lynn found that horse, he called Jim and said, I got to go buy the stallion, ride with me, because I think it was 3 or 4 hours away. So Jim and Lynn were good friends, and Jim had a connection. I believe he even worked for Indian Meridian, and of course Scott had been connected to him. So they had a connection there, and actually Jim is a co-owner on a first couple of them, I believe, a first couple of those fillies, because one of the mares he was connected with, one of the Salty mares. So all these are out of Salty mares, by the way. So this is national champion Salty Boots Array. And then this was one of the later ones. I remember when I moved down to Oklahoma, and Jeremy and Julie took me on a tour, because after we unloaded my horse trailer with 2 horses and all my personal stuff, Lynn had to take Winona that morning to Oklahoma City to a doctor's appointment. So the 3 of us played around and went and looked at the horses. So I got to see Lynn's herd for like the 2nd or 3rd time in my life, probably the 3rd or 4th time in my life. And of course, Jeremy had seen it several times every year, many times every year. And anyway, we had fun looking at Johnny Gotta Look. And I remember seeing this filly, and Jeremy telling me, and she was already a mare, he said, that's a Spanish Array daughter. And I'm like, why doesn't he show her in the small mares? And they ended up doing that 3 years after I said that. And there she is. She won the small mares. Of course, there's Jeremy at the lead shank there. Pat's helping hold the baby. That's a Salty Stole the Look baby, and a Salty Stole the Diamonds, I believe is his name. He was a striking black colt. And then, of course, Julie there and Lynn. the breeder of both these animals. So, and Lynn bred that mare back to a stallion he had sold Jeremy and Julie that got Julie back going into POAs, and that's Salty Stole the Look, and that's the cross here. So again, this little mare here is an own daughter of big old Spanish Array, and she won the small mare class at the National Congress by then. That might have been one of the first years it was called Congress. So here's another one. So how many do we have now? We have Britches Array. Are you keeping track at home, guys? Crystal Array is 2. Boots Array. Solar or Diamonds, the one we just looked at. So that was 4 fillies. This is Solar Array. Lexi, you talked about Solar Eclipse. This is Salty's Solar Array. He was a national champion at the international show. Pat showed him. A very long English type horse. He didn't really get the big old muscle. Again, his mother was, I believe, Boots. I think he's a full brother to Boots Array. Jeremy can correct me if I'm wrong, but he displayed that bay color from that little old POA mare. Didn't carry the red, but he also was narrower and just longer, and a lot of his horses went on to do stuff though, English and games, and he was out at Lynn's for a long time. I believe he was there when Lynn passed away. And then this is the last one that Lynn had by the group, and a lot of people identify this horse, Salty Array. Lynn got sick when this horse was about 2 years old, and my dad picked him up and brought him up to our place, and we had him as his 2-year-old and 3-year-old year. We actually bred him to a mare for Lynn and hauled the mare back with him. I showed him as a 3-year-old, and I ran up against a tough KS's Snowcap with Todd Korn showing him. I tied with him for second down in Tennessee, and a stallion by Scooter and out of a Wieskamp branded mare won that class, an RBR that Darren Vincent was showing. And I'm like, well, I tied with Todd Korn, and I got beat by Darren, so it wasn't too bad. But I know Lynn had a lot of dreams tied into this horse because he was beautiful colored, and he was a nice horse. He might have had a few little holes, but very modern. There he is, and he ended up winning the international show. He was never grand, but he was reserve grand in this photo. That would have been in 2009. And then the next year in 2010, Jeremy and Julie's Salty Stallion was reserve grand. Salty Stole the Look. So kind of cool story there. But, he does have that eye and that headset and that neck. Again, that shoulder. You can't miss that shoulder and front end on these Spanish POAs, Spanish Array POAs. Solar is the only one that didn't really have it as much. But again, he was shown early and then out in a big pasture with cattle and mares his whole life. This horse was more kept up by the house because he was so flashy, and he was sent to Erin Brown many times to get ready, and she did well with him every time she had him. And then of course Pat showed him. Here's some pictures I think Jeremy snapped of him. You see that chest, and here's a good profile view of him. Again, he wasn't very tall. I think he ended up being 54. When I had him as a 3-year-old, somebody up in South Dakota measured him out. But then another guy got him in. Larry Gibson got him in for me at 55 inches. And then he ended up being a multiple national champion in the medium class at 54. So I always kind of laugh about that. But, that's the cool stories that make it fun talking about. So this is Salty Array. They were going to name him, I think, Salty or Razum or something. Jeremy will know, or Razum Array or something. I didn't realize that. So I just told Lynn, well, he's the last one you're going to get. And he's maybe the best one. Why don't you name him Salty Array? So that's how he ended up. I sent in his papers not knowing that he already had a name. So that's the portion of those 6 champions by Spanish Array. And of course, like I say, Norm Stevenson also bred POAs to Spanish Array. And I don't know of anybody else that bred POA mares. I don't think Bob Rosen ever did. Of course, Bob's got probably the best collection of Wieskamp quarter horse POA combo horses in the country right now up in Iowa. And he's a historian on the Wieskamp program. I'd like to have Bob on here and talk about more Wieskamp bred POAs eventually, but his schedule is really busy up there in Iowa. Okay, so our last section of the show, Salty Diamonds Array and Salty Crystal Array are full sisters too. Okay, and then Boots and Solar are full, I believe. So yeah, and then Jeremy's mare, this one right here, Jeremy and Julie's mare, she became the cornerstone of their foundation program, and they still have stuff related to her. And of course, this is Salty Gala, Galla, named after her grandma, Spanish Gala, and she's a full sister to a Ray and to a solid red colt that Lynn ended up getting rid of just because a guy offered him something. He was there. Greg Mursky from Wisconsin took a tour around POA farms, and he ended up buying him and bringing him back to Wisconsin. So I don't know if he ever raised any babies out of him. He had a bunch of horses up there too, a lot of Santees and a few Salties back in the 2000s. So, okay, what's Jeremy saying here? Our mare, Salty Gala, was the last full Spanish array put on the ground. She was a full sister to Salty Ray. Yep, I just mentioned that, but I didn't mention she was the last Spanish array baby ever, so that's kind of cool that it was a POA. And if you look at the leading sires list, he's up there for quarter horses Spanish array for only having a couple people breeding to him, and mainly because every registered one Lynn had, he had shown. He had people show him, and then Pat let them in, and they all won, rightfully so. So here's a picture of her with her first baby. A lot of people recognize this baby. This was J&J, Spanish-looking lady, born in 2010, and this is when I think Jeremy and Julie really realized they could do this POA thing and create some great POA babies, because she grew up to be a beautiful mare and a champion, futurity and national champion. And there she is, with Julie at the lead and Pat there. Nice silver trophy, futurity champion. So she would have been 2 in this picture. And when she was a yearling, she probably had the biggest hindquarters I've seen on a POA when you walk around her. If a judge just profiled her, you might not put her grand, but if you walked around her, you not only probably put her first in the yearling class, you'd probably maybe even put her grand, because you can even see in this picture her stifle, her inside gaskin, her gaskin muscle. She definitely got that Wieskamp Spanish array pop. And there she is as an older mare. Not real old, I don't think, Jeremy, but she's, she's had quite a few babies now. I believe she's had 6 babies. So glasses time again, but I won't show you my face this time when I put them on. So for Jeremy and Julie, she's had J&J First Class Lady, J&J Hot Spanish Secret, J&J Not Feeling Chocolate, J&J Secret Dreams, J&J She's a Gold Digger by Double D's Cadillac Gold, which they've retained Gold Digger for Broodmare, and then J&J Silent Array. So several of those are by their Leopard Roseland bred stallion Silent Review, and then they also the last year's filly J&J First Class Lady is by Fly the Red Eye, who we seen earlier, or I Fly First Class, I'm sorry, the POA Norm, their stallion up there, Kira's stallion, and then he's a hot score, was a sire one of them as well. So that's her babies, and you're gonna hear a lot more about some of those. Now, I always liked this filly because that's when I was getting to know Jeremy and Julie. I met them in '06. Jeremy actually came up to a sale my dad and I had. He rode with Lynn. I thought he was one of Lynn's hired hands because Lynn had Joey, who I've worked with before at Lynn and sold him about 4 trucks now. He worked for Lynn for a decade or more, off and on. He had him with, so I just thought Jeremy was a guy that had a camera in his hand. And then I found out, oh, he married Julie, who was from Kansas, and she grew up in POAs. So that's kind of a cool story. Here's that mare again. She has that injury there on her forearm, so that kind of made her a brood mare a little earlier than they might have wanted to. But she's doing her part. For as good as that mare is and all she won, and I'm not taking nothing away from her, I'm a red guy, and I always like this filly. And Stevens know I like this filly a lot too. This is the full sister, and this is J&J Spanish Looking Angel. So there was Spanish Looking Lady and Spanish Looking Angel. So they were both by Salty Stole the Look, and then out of the Spanish Array daughter we seen Salty Gala. So the picture I use a lot of her is right there. Even though that's a home shot, not a professional shot, and her mane's not all ready. Look at the length of the neck, that Spanish Array shoulder, the length of the croup, the top line. I just think that mare's a outstanding mare, and I think she's going to make her mark as she already has, but she's going to continue to make her mark. She's only, 10 years old as a brood mare. So this is one of Itzy's babies. Itzy's the first one we showed, J&J Spanish looking lady. This is one of her babies. Jeremy can come on here and give comments about who's who. I get a little confused. I believe this is Not Feeling Chocolate, but I might be wrong. I think Susan Wells showed this one. This is a pretty filly. And there she is, getting ready. In their nice little stall there, big stall. Really. There's Susan. So that's that same filly. That's probably a yearling there at the futurity. Look at that look through that halter. Look at that build. You can tell the breeding. So this is another one of Itzy's babies. Again, Itzy is Spanish looking lady. Few spot, of course. And then I believe this is the one they retained. The Gold Digger one with the socks. If I'm way off, Jeremy, let me know. I can tell that's her mother because it's right there. So cute little head. Palomino, they're getting some Palominos and cool colors. So the mare that I say is one of my favorite mares, Spanish Looking Angel. Here she is after having her first baby. And of course this guy became J&J Smooth Operator, who ended up winning some hardware. He was awarded in Indianapolis for being High Point, and of course he won at the national show as well. We can't zoom into that trophy, but I think he won the Yearling Trail, if I'm not mistaken. And I always like this colt as well. He's just a coming 2-year-old now, but he's out of that mare that I really like. And then their Leopard Stallion, Jeremy and Julie's Silent Review Stallion. Okay, so we covered the J&J program, part of the Spanish Array and Fly the Red Eye. It's kind of cool how they've merged those two quarter horses that I say two that have made a difference, and they have both of them in their program. So that's cool. And yep, done a great job, Jeremy, giving credit to the people that get these babies out there. And if it wasn't for the showers, you know, us breeders, I used to be a breeder anyway, we'd just be sitting at home looking at them out in the pasture in the pen going, boy, this one should be on the road. It's a good one. So, yep, there's the people that make things happen. So now we're going to move on to a filly who's also become a cornerstone of a program. And Shannon Sucre started out with this filly, Supreme Britches Array. That's her as a weanling. Of course, she's a few spot. It always helps to have a good bred few spot as a brood mare. But Shannon's crossed this mare to some great quarter horse stallions over the years, and now she's kept some of her offspring, so she's become a bigger breeder. I think she mentioned she has 5 babies coming this spring, which is a lot for Shannon because she was usually like a 1-mare operation. And then she kept this filly's first filly, who became a 2-time grand champion mare, SLS Dreams Come True by Hot Fudge Chip, AQHA. She kept her as well, and she's becoming a great brood mare now, and she's also still a show mare. So we're going to show now. There's Pat again. Pat always seems to lead the good ones, doesn't he? He gets a hold of them somehow. The guy, pretty good how he gets those contacts. But he knows a good horse, and the owners know they want a good showman. So that's a great view of her. Look at that top line, and that's a broodmare deluxe right there. Look at those points. You know, a true few spot. Just a beautiful mare. And there she is with Shannon. Of course, Shannon loves her puppies as much as she loves her horses. And I think she loves her husband too, but I know she loves her horses and her dogs, and she loves POAs. That's winning the Congress there. Look at all that hardware. So, national champion. But this mare showed well, and she's bred well. So now she's by JKA Supreme Scooter, if we haven't mentioned that. Hence the name Supreme Britches Array. So her dad was one of the best sires of all time, especially for a few spot, the RBR stallion down in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. But also the mother was a grand champion mare, Salty Britches Array. So you breed JKA Supreme Scooter to Salty Britches Array, and you get this mare who was destined to become a great brood mare, and she has, Hall of Fame worthy, and that's Supreme Britches Array. So there she is with her first baby, and this is SLS Dreams Come True, again by Hot Fudge Chip, AQHA, and she won Grand as a yearling, and then she come back, I think, as a 3-year-old. I believe Flawless was in between there, another POA from Texas, in that area anyway, Oklahoma, Texas. But this is a great picture here. Talk about mare and foal. This is just the next year, so the foal's already a yearling. You know, January is the stock show. So really cool picture there, and these are great memories for Shannon. She created all this stuff. Of course, that's her real close friend, Kristen Fears. Always helps out with leading one, and that would be Dreams Come True too, as she bodied up as an age mare. She wasn't that old there, but she carries a little more body than her mom. And then that would be the 14 baby. I'm not sure if that is Time to Inspire or Talk Derby to me. It could be Scandalous. I don't think it is. But then later she had the Lazy Life. And then, of course, SLS Awesome All Night we're going to talk about. He's the cover boy. He's on the cover this year of the year-end magazine. Laws Don't Apply to Me. I know you've heard of that one. And then, of course, Yes, No, Maybe So is this Few Spot Mare's latest baby who won the Futurity, the Select Sire Futurity in Illinois with Kendi Kennedy this last fall. So there's SLS Dreams Come True, winning some more trophies for Shannon. Shannon might have to employ somebody to help dust all these trophies she's collected over the past 10 to 15 years. There's a nice ad, 2-time National Congress Grand Champion mare. You know how hard it is to repeat? You know, we've had 2 mares do it 3 times. The great JBJ's mare, and then, of course, a hardship mare, HA's Top Request. But even doing it twice is so very hard in this day and age. But this mare did it, and now she's packing little kids around, and they're throwing ropes off her and just living the Texas life. So there's Supreme Britches Array again, doing what she does best, raising champion babies. And this is SLS Awesome All Night. So this would have been in 2018. If he looks familiar, he should be, because that's what he looked like at the Congress as a baby. And if you look like that in July in Tulsa, you're probably going to end up like that. You're probably going to win some stuff. And he did. He was the first baby ever to be Grand Champion Stallion, our first baby to be any Grand Champion. Now we had this year at the last Congress, we had a filly do it for the first time ever, and then of course we had another colt do it. But he was the first one. That's his claim to fame. You can't take that away from him. He won Grand Champion as a weanling, but he wasn't done there. He came back as a yearling and won again. So why are these horses on here tonight? Well, because they're related to Spanish Array. So if you've just tuned in, we were talking about Fly the Red Eye, Supreme Champion Reserve World Champion quarter horse that Norm Stevenson introduced to POAs. And then our second part of the show was Spanish Array, the quarter horse that Lynn Puffenbarger introduced to POAs, breeding to him a number of times, probably about 9 or 10 times. Got 6 colored registered babies by him. All 6 became champions. And one of them, a Grand Champion mare, ended up being the grandmother to 2 Grand Champions. So dreams come true. And of course this dude, SLS Awesome All Night, who's a 2-time, both of them were 2-time Grand Champions. So just quite a slate here of champions, and just a great bloodline. Here's some beautiful professional shots here. If Shannon's watching, she can give a shout out to the young lady that took these shots. Again, I always said they went for artistic in these shots, not so much about standing him up and stuff. He's got enough win photos in his photo album. He could use some River shots, and it's fitting because his name is River. She names a lot of hers with the R, you know, Reagan and Ryan and all that. So this is River. Again, he's, let's see, how old? He's 6 now. And look at this dude. That's a cool picture there. That's the one that's on the cover. if you probably got your year-end magazine, beautiful magazine Tammy Verzi puts out every year for POAC, he's your cover boy right there. Stallion down in Texas. And I like to end it with that one because that shows the Spanish Array breeding and even the, the scooter and everything else. But look at that hind end and that forearm from the back angle there. That's not quite a 3/4 view. That's almost a right on. Beautiful picture. So I want to thank Shannon for sending me all these pictures. And again, I went through these really fast, so I'll go through this Few Spot Mares babies again. Supreme Britches Array, who's a multiple national champion herself, multiple national champion producer, and grand champion producer. She's responsible for 4 grand champion titles, 2 by her first full SLS Dreams Come True by Hot Fudge Chip, AQHA, and then, of course, 2 more by, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Her 6th baby, SLS Awesome All Night by Night Moves, the beautiful black quarter horse stallion. So if somebody just did they put impact or something like that? Yeah, talk about an impact, Lexi, right? Lasting impact. So that's how Hall of Fame careers are made right there. So we got to talk about this one too, but let me finish up on Supreme Britches Array. I mentioned her first baby over and over, and then Time to Inspire was her second one. That was by Zippo's Gold Rolex, again a famous quarter horse stallion. Then you had Talk Derby to Me and Scandalous were the next 2, both by Set for Life. And then came The Lazy Life. I remember that one as a baby by No Doubt I'm Lazy, again another famous quarter horse. And then SLS Awesome All Night followed, and then Laws Don't Apply to Me by LB All the Rage, of course with Spencer's late Appaloosa stallion, about POA size. It's made a Hall of Fame career for himself as well. And then her last baby is the current reigning Select Sire Futurity Champion filly, Yes, No, Maybe So. And that's by LB All the Rage, which was his 5th Futurity Champion, by the way. So Shannon crossed some really good bloodlines there. She's never bred this mare to a bad stallion, and it shows because she had a great mare, so she knew what to do with her. And of course, she still has her. So now we move on to, we got to skip back a generation a little bit and go back to Supreme Britches Array's mother, who is Salty Britches Array. Keep track at home. You might have to write this down. It gets confusing, I know. Here's Aaron Brown showing TX's Chippin' Array, who in a short time made a name for himself, a Few Spot stallion. Of course, he was owned by 2 of the breeders we're highlighting tonight, the 2 that have made a difference. I'm talking about the 2 quarter horse stallions, but also about Norm Stevenson and Lynn Puffenbarger. And this horse was owned by both of them, owned by Norm Stevenson, and he was owned by Lynn Puffenbarger when he left this world. So he made a definite impact on Lynn's program because Lynn never used Few Spot stallions. I believe this was the first one he ever used, especially big time like he did. But they also showed this horse. Aaron campaigned this horse. Of course, Aaron's one of our great trainers, either under saddle or at halter, either way. And she won a jacket there for Lynn, National Congress champion, with a Few Spot stallion, which we know is hard to do. TX's Chippin' Array. I know your kids might be riding something related to him for sure. And he was by Pal Chippin' Putt, Grand Champion stallion, and then out of a Grand Champion mare, Salty Britches Array, who we showed earlier, Spanish Array's first champion in POAs. So here's something that I'd come up with years ago, and then the Puffenbarger family ran with it, and Jeremy and Julie and all Lynn's supporters, including me. So I'm proud of that. I discovered that he had six decades of champions. So when Jeremy was on the trivia show a couple weeks ago, he talked about Salty Apple. Doc Demers had him, Grand Champion Gilding, back in '65. But then why we have this here is for the right side of the page, and that is Salty Britches Array, 99, Salty Crystal Array, 2000, Grand Champion. We talked about them. But then the one we haven't talked about, and I apologize I don't have better pictures of her, is the 2018 Grand Champion mare, which gave Lynn his 6th decade of Grands, and that is Salty So Secret. And she was by Chippin' Array. and out of a mare that Lynn had bought from Bob Roseland. So, of course, Aaron Brown has her and her mom have her down in Texas. She's a beautiful mare. So that's all I have for pictures. I don't know what time it is, 7:35. I thought I'd be till 9 o'clock talking. I'll look at the comments here. Jeremy, I probably missed some of your comments. Lexi, thanks for commenting so much. Yep, Jeremy. Jeremy's a historian, and of course this was his wheelhouse because these two quarter horses, the blood's flowing in his pastures and pens up there in Sterling, Kansas. So, not feeling chocolate. Yep, not feeling chocolate. Not feeling chocolate was J&J. I apologize for that. That was that bay yearling I showed in Baby. She's by Itzy, out of Itzy. And anyway, thank you everybody for watching. We got to talk about sponsorships again. Please send in your sponsorships. If you can only afford $150, I understand, especially if you're showing. I know it's expensive to show. But, you know, if you buddy up with somebody, say you had two good friends back in the day, send 50 a piece in. Just get together and send it all in one. You know, 150 just for one class. But if you can be a $2,000 sponsor and get an end cap and things like that, that's great too. Or in advertising and a banner and all that. Or if you want to sponsor, like Paycom sponsors the Jumbotron and the live streaming to pay for cover all that expense. Hey, that's great too. We need the big sponsors. Bid on the tables. We have the tables auctioning off right now on a silent, well, not so silent bid. It's on a Facebook bid, so bid on those. We have a lot of tables to generate money. So we're still at the place in POA history where we need the support of the membership for sponsorships if we want beautiful awards and keep putting on the show at nice locations such as Tulsa. And so, you know, the show is one of the profit makers, and it's all because of you guys. It's all because of the membership. So through your entries and also through your just generous sponsorships over the years. So if you've sponsored in the past, please contact us again now. If you want to, in honor of Grandpa or your dad or somebody, your mom that's passed away, a farm, current farm, past farm, an old friend, and whatever, your old horse that was your POA, the one you grew up on, the one you took your graduation pictures with, you know, just send in $150. You don't even have to pay for it till May 20th. Just make a commitment to Monica, my wife, Monica Rourke, on Facebook. Just find her, and she's gained a lot of POA friends in the last 2 or 3 months, and mainly she thought she was really popular. Of course she is. She's married to me, and she's a great woman. Just kidding. But anyway, you're kidding about being married to me, making it great. But she was getting these friend requests because people wanted to sponsor these classes. So that's great. We got a lot of classes filled, but we need help. So again, we had a board meeting last night, 3.5 hours long. We all got along. I think we're all a little hoarse at the end of the meeting. We got a lot of stuff to do. We're trying to make Monica is a saint. That's right. She is. We got a lot of stuff to do for Congress yet. I'm going to be there with my beautiful wife and the little puppy Stella. She's going to be helping us with stalls. Hopefully somebody don't step on her. That'll be her first. Well, it won't be her first show because she'll be at some shows before that this spring. So again, if you got a beautiful POA standing out in your yard and you can make it to the Congress, come support us at the Congress. Wouldn't it be cool to see a bunch of halter horses in the classes again? I know we've had a few down years like all the other breeds, but the registrations are up, the memberships are up, so we count on you guys to show at the big shows like the Eastern Classic and Eastern World and West World, of course, both those shows, and then the Futurity in the fall and the National Show in Tulsa, which will be the 66th annual National Show. They changed the name on us. It's not international anymore, but it's the same annual show. And in Tulsa, starting July 5th, move in 8 a.m. July 3rd, will be the 66th annual National POAC show. That should bring goosebumps to you. That's a cool deal that it's been going on that long. So, all right, everybody. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, everybody else that commented. Sorry, I can't name all your names right now, and a lot of you are just Facebook users. So, how about adding a dog race. So yeah, and then it went up. I couldn't read it. Yeah, Stella's getting to be a wiener dog, so she might do good in a race. She don't look like a corgi as much. She does have the corgi ears and the corgi butt, but boy, she's got a long body. So you people that seen her at Futurity, you'll be shocked when you see her this spring. So Monica will probably bring her with me when I judge some shows all over the country too. So. All right, that's episode 10, two that have made a difference. Episode 10 this year, episode 76. Thanks to my beautiful wife for putting all 75 past episodes on YouTube. You can go to the POA history page on YouTube or whatever they call it, channel, I guess, and look up all of those. So tell your friends to go watch them. If somebody wants information that just got into POAs, looking for some facts and some stuff, send them to YouTube and have them watch some of those videos, especially if they say they had a KS's or they had a Gold Prince or a Salty or whatever, Doc Nemmers. Them guys are all featured on there, and we have a lot of other cool shows on there too, so send them there. All right, everybody, enjoy the song. Thanks for watching.